𝘤𝘰𝘯𝘳𝘬 was waiting for her husband on the couch as usual, but he was late. She sometimes thinks he is becoming sick of marriage, but she also feels that way because their pattern hasn't changed in 10 years. When they first got married, they were the happiest couple in the world. 10 years had gone since they had been walking hand in hand through the streets while enjoying ice cream, and everything looked so monotonous. Cuddling, watching movies, and feeding each other no longer seemed as romantic. She blames it on her aging. She will soon be 36, and he will be 39, and they seldom have time for one another because she is too busy taking care of her daughter, who is almost 10, and he is too busy taking care of the business he founded. She no longer experiences butterflies, she no longer senses the entrancing electricity when he touches her. There are no more morning kisses, goodnight kisses, or dates, and everything seems to be vanishing like sand particles from one's palm. And she had no control over it. She believes that they are both no longer in love, that they are happier apart from one another, and that their roles in each other's life are little more than those of wives and husbands on paper. She made the decision to discuss divorce with him today after giving it some serious thought. Yes, she wants to get a divorce since her marriage is loveless and will soon become toxic. If not for a divorce, then at least for a break, but she is being stopped by the notion of her kid. The door opened, and her exhausted husband entered. He paused for a second and turned to face his wife, who was waiting for him on the couch. Usually, she would be asleep when he got home. He kicked off his shoes, placed them on a rack, hung up his long coat, then walked over to the couch and sat down, letting out a sigh as he loosened his tie. "Why have you remained awake?" he inquired, keeping his gaze fixed on the ceiling rather than her. 𝘤𝘰𝘯𝘳 groaned as she stared at him and thought, he always does this and spends all his time at his office and not with his family. "We need to talk, Taehyung," she remarked firmly, drawing the other's attention to her. "I'm all ears." He said that. 𝘤𝘰𝘯𝘳 sighed in shock while he licking his nervously chapped lips. "We require a break." "It's not working, Taehyung, we aren't working anymore, we hardly speak, it's simply a loveless marriage we're in, and we've lost love. It's not a joke, we have a kid, and we're acting like strangers under the same roof. What are you intending to do when you spend time with my company? I can't continue to live like this. If that's the case, let's get a divorce." He remained silent for a few while, and she observed as his gaze fluctuated between rage, hurt, and disappointment until he looked aside and cleared his throat.
I hate all this overthinking, The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to a world of silver, no more heartbreaks, tears, painkillers. Take me somewhere unfamiliar, bring me back to where we started.
He remained silent for a few whiles, and she observed as his gaze fluctuated between rage, hurt, and disappointment, until he looked aside and cleared his throat. "𝘤𝘰𝘯𝘳, I swear we'll figure this out." He tried to persuade her that perhaps he hadn't really fallen out of love after all, and that perhaps it had been just her, but whatever the cause, they needed to make it right before it turned tragic and destroyed both of them along with their daughter. She would do anything to protect her daughter, and so a temporary break would be better for them. "Taehyung, how are you going to make it work? Don't you see that we need to stop before it becomes toxic? Taehyung, we need to work on ourselves since we no longer love each other." Taehyung gave her a startled look as she spoke, but she could sense the sadness hiding behind it because she had known him for half her life. Taehyung got up from the couch, quietly knelt down in front of her, took her hands in his, and gazed into her piercing gray eyes. "Who said we don't love each other? My sentiments remain the same. 𝘤𝘰𝘯𝘳, if you could give me 6 months, please. If this doesn't work out, I promise we'll take a break. He added, his eyes imploring. It's not like he hurt her, or anything. She simply fell out of love, and who knows, in these 6 months they will fall back in love. She feels giving it another opportunity won't hurt, so she can do that. I'm not sure how you are going to make it work. I feel like we are strangers who formerly knew each other. I'll try to make it work too, but keep in mind, Taehyung, that dead stars never align. And dead relationships never work out. She said that after gazing intently into his eyes for a time. Taehyung blinked. After a little period of stillness, he looked down at his lap before turning to face her and grinning. Dead stars may not align, and dead relationships may never work out, but stars take millions of years to die, and the connections that end up dying weren't really there to begin with. She screamed in surprise as she wrapped her hands around his neck as he grinned and rose up, placing one hand under her knee and the other on her back. My daughter must have exhausted you, so let's go, wifey, he remarked, grinning in her presence. After putting her on the bed, he got in the shower. When he emerged, she was still there and was staring at him, his hair still damp and unkempt. He grinned and walked up to her. What if things didn't work out, Taehyung? Obviously, she didn't want to damage her family, but she also didn't want to make it poisonous, so she asked while fumbling with her fingers. It will work out, Yn. My love is strong, and if it doesn't, you are free to leave at any moment. As they listened to their heartbeats, which were both racing while they were in one another's arms, he whispered while kissing her forehead and grabbing her in his arms. She opened her eyes after feeling the sun's rays on her face, smiled, and smelled something lovely. Pancakes. Taehyung is aware of her fondness for pancakes. She forced herself to get up and went to the bathroom to freshen herself. After coming out of the bathroom in her bathrobe, she proceeded to fetch some new clothes for herself. She grinned at the thought of him baking pancakes for her. When she stepped outside, Taehyung was sitting on the bed grinning at her. Normally, he would go to work early, but today he didn't, so she thinks he was correct when he said he'd figure anything out. She grinned back at him, but it was odd for her because he had changed and was now at home. She closed her eyes, her pulse racing. She missed this, being with her husband, and spending time together. She doubted it was because they had fallen out of love, rather, they were just separated from one another and, as the saying goes, out of sight, out of mind. When she noticed Taehyung smiling at her in the mirror, she smiled as well. Terry is waiting, and I cooked your favorite breakfast, so let's go. She nodded and smiled slightly as he said, and as she went downstairs, she noticed her daughter waiting for them at the dining room table. Good morning, Mom and Dad. They both beamed at her as she said it happily, walked up to kiss their cheeks, and then started laughing and leaping around. I can't believe I missed seeing us all together. You two look adorable together. They both sat on the chair in front of her as she made them laugh with her sweet statement. They ate peacefully as Tae related anecdotes about her school. Occasionally, they would chuckle at her stories. When breakfast was over, Taehyung picked up his bag, Tae picked up her school bag, and Yn took up her purse. We'll be late, so let's go, sweetie. When they were ready to go, Yn remarked to Terry, but Taehyung stopped them. I'm dropping you both, he said with a smile, making Terry jump with joy once again. It had been a year since her father had sent her off, and she had missed it. Yes, Mom, let's go. Running for the door, she muttered, making Yn laugh, but she stopped when she noticed Taehyung grinning at her. What? She inquired as stomach flutters filled her. She took a step back as Taehyung shook his head and kissed the corner of her lips, widening her gaze. Nothing, I missed you, he remarked, grabbing her hand and stepping in between their fingers. Terry was seated in the rear seat of his car, smiling widely at them as they left. The car stopped in front of her office, and as she turned to go, a gentle hand touched hers. She turned around to see him staring at her, and Yen scowled as he drew nearer. She questioned, "What's wrong, Taehyung?" but was cut when he pecked her lips and then nose. "Be careful," he said softly, causing her heart to skip a beat and her cheeks to heat up as she nodded. He then caressed her hair, causing her to grin glumly and exit the vehicle. "Even after 10 years, she is still the same," he laughed as he looked at her as she ran into her office. "I love you." She turned to face him when he yelled, her eyes widening, but he grinned and waved before speeding away. They were walking through the park on a beautiful summer morning with dew droplets on the grass, vibrant trees, and wonderful flowers flowering here and there. "I missed getting up early on Sundays to go for a stroll." Yen nodded as she gazed at their hands and realized she had missed this as he said, interjecting with their fingers. She was filled with nothing but love as she spent time with him in the lovely, gentle light. "Do you remember when we were younger, when it was just you and I? When we were naive and wild, so young, those were some of the best days of our lives. And while I want to go back there, I also don't want to because nothing can separate us even though we may have changed, we will continue to do what we always did." She felt trapped by him as he spoke while tightening the hold on their hands. He grinned before turning away, and his smile was always alluring. "However, you weren't naive, rather, you were a troublemaker who often caused concern for oneself." He laughed and nodded as she suggested, turning her head away. "Yeah, and then you'd pamper me and say," he said. He smiled at her, which caused her to grin back as she recalled the times when they were so content and everything seemed to be coming back. Perhaps it wasn't a fall in love, but rather a shortage of time, she thought. She turned to face him after already turning to look at him, her lovely grin making him feel ecstatic. "When will you quit bothering me, my troublemaker?" they both said before joining in on the laughter. "You know, you were a pain because you were always putting yourself in harm's way while defending others, and you thought it was amusing to worry me in that way." As he looked at her with a fake expression of pain, she remarked while hitting his arm and making him wince. "You know that hurts," he muttered, feeling his arm, only to get punched by her again. She continued onward, staring at the scenery surrounding them, while he hurried after her. "Well, it wasn't my fault that you were adorable when you were anxious." She scowled at what he said. "Yeah. Kim Taehyung, you idiot," she added while chasing after him as he fled while laughing. "Wait for me, I'm going to kill you today." "Tae will be waking soon. Let's go," she spoke while glancing at him, who was already gazing lovingly at her. "Let's leave," he replied, forcing her to wrap her fingers around his muscular biceps as they walked to their house. He grinned broadly the entire time. When they opened the door, they were unprepared to smell burning. Alarmed, they hurried inside to find their daughter seated at the dining table with the floor covering it, and the kitchen was partially burned. It's going to be a long Sunday for the two of them because of their daughter's love, they both thought as Tae yelled surprise and drew them both to the table while still staring at the awful kitchen. Instead of shaking their heads in disbelief, they grinned. "I made breakfast for you, 𝘰𝘯𝘳𝘬, look." Tae jumped up and down in joy after finally being able to cook some bread for her parents and make some coffee after her 10th effort. Certainly, the child was a difficult one. She placed a chair for Yen and Taehyung, who sat down. As Yen bit into the toast, she noticed that the back had nearly entirely burned, and she grinned at her daughter's embarrassed grin. "Sorry, Mum, about that," she murmured, prompting Yen to shake her head and take a slice of the toast before sipping the unpleasant coffee. However, she smiled, prompting Taehyung to do the same, and the two of them turned to face their daughter, who was beaming eagerly at them. "It tastes great," the both of them said at the same time, making Taehyung jump up and down in happiness. Yn looked at her with love to fill eyes, and the decision of asking for divorce make her regret. How can she even think of divorce if Taehyung didn't have time for her? She was the same. Whenever he would ask her, she would always decline till he got tired and she started blaming it on him and then falling out of love. It was not falling out of love, it was the lack of quality time that made her think they fall out. She still feel the butterflies in her stomach. She still feel her heartbeat raise with him. She still feel happy with him, and she won't ever let go of this relation ever. It is the most beautiful relation. The both of them loved each other, protected each other, shared everything, and kept each other's secrets safe. She won't know how can she push behind all those years and say that she wants a divorce. Shaking her head, she smiled and hugged Taehyung, kissing her head lightly. "Go and freshen up, you look like a ghost," she said, making her pout, but she nodded and ran to her room. "Don't eat without me, I'm coming within a second," Taehyung shouted from her room, making the both of them chuckle, as Yn quickly took the plates, and took out toast, roasting it, while Taehyung helped her up with the coffee. They set the table the way Taehyung did, intentionally burning some toast. Taehyung came downstairs looking more presentable and sat with her parents. Taking a bite of her toast, she hummed in satisfaction. "Wow, Dad, I'm a better cook than you. Should learn something from me, this is my first time cooking," she said proudly, making Taehyung chuckle as he nodded his head fondly. "Okay, ma'am. I would love to take classes from you if you have time," he said as all of them burst into laughter, enjoying the breakfast with smiles and laughs. "Mom, Dad, he is so cool." Taehyung pointed at the kid's character in the movie they were watching. Yn gave her a smile. The both of them were clinging to her. Taehyung's head was on her left thigh and Taehyung's on her right thigh, eating popcorn while watching the movie. Yn shook her head. No, she was not irritated. It was one of the beautiful moments life had given her. She smiled at them fondly, creasing the both of their soft hair as Taehyung hummed in response, making Taehyung giggle. "Mom, Dad is going to fall asleep right here, I'm telling you," Taehyung said with a loud laugh, making Yn chuckle as she looked at her husband's almost closing eyes. "Okay, now get up, the both of you, let me lay down too, my back is hurting, jeez," she said, making an annoying face. Taehyung nodded her head while Taehyung started whining like a kid not wanting to get up. "Yakim, Taehyung, get up or I'm gonna kick you," she said sternly, making him sit up and held his hands in the air as if surrendering himself. "I'm up," he mumbled with a cute pout, making them laugh. She lay down as Taehyung again put her head on one side of her stomach and Taehyung on the other side, making her sigh. These both missed having her at home, only to cling to her all day long. She shook her head in disbelief. She didn't know when they went into their sweet dreamland while all of them were watching a movie and giggling, but when she woke up she felt something heavy on her. She looked down to see Taehyung falling on top of her, his head on her chest and one hand on her waist hugging her, and his other hand was holding Taehyung's. She shook her head. He is still clingy. He won't ever let anyone hug her when they sleep, except for himself. No, he is not possessive or something, that it's just this is his favorite spot, on top of her. He can't sleep without hugging her like a koala, as if he leaves her, someone will snatch her away from him, and that's how Taehyung ended up in his hand, while he didn't even know what he did in his sleep and how he placed her there. Yn sighed, trying to get up, but how can she when a 63 kilograms man is lying on top of her? "Yakim, Taehyung, wake up," she said, but he looked to the other side, nuzzling more into her neck, making her almost let out a giggle, cause of the tickling effect if she was not used to it. "Ya, get up, you broke my back," she said loudly, making him look at her with his sleepy eyes, making her almost coo at him, but she gave him a stern look, making him whine and get up. Fine, I'm up," he said in his morning hoarse voice, sitting up. She was about to stand up, but he pulled her back, making her land on his lap. "Where are you going? What about my kiss?" he said, pouting his lips, making her sigh again. When she was marrying him, she was sure she married an adult and not a kid, right? She sighed again and pecked his lips, but he pulled her closer, closing the gap between them as he softly licks her bottom lips, making her reflect on his action. They kept on kissing each other for a moment before hearing someone's sleepy voice and shuffling. "I can't believe you both are kissing in front of a kid," Tae said, covering her face with a blanket and looking away, making Taehyung laugh as Yn's cheeks darken. She gave him a death glare and ran to their bedroom, taking out hers and Taehyung clothes and then doing the same for Tae. Tae kissed both of their cheeks as she was about to go out of the car, but again looked at them and said, "Don't start kissing here, you will be late for work," she said before going out of the car and running towards her school. Yn shook her head, looking at her. "She is becoming a brat day by day," she said. "I love you too, Mom," Tae screamed, making Yn sigh in disbelief and Taehyung laugh loudly. "So? Would you like to kiss me or?" He couldn't complete his sentence when she hit his arm, glaring at him. "Yeah. You lady fierce. This is my poor arm you always hit." He whined, rubbing his arm where she hit him, but she again pinched his arms, gritting her teeth and making him whine even more. "If one of these days something happened to my arms, then dear nature please be witness, it's all cause of this lady fierce I married," he said, only to get hit on his arm again. Yn glared at him, making him gulp. Okay my lady fierce, let's take you to your office," he said as he started driving the car. "If I knew you were this fierce lady inside, I would have never proposed to you, we would have been fiancés forever," he said, whining, making her raise her hand, about to hit his arm again, but he quickly covered it with his hand, moving away from her. "Not my poor arm again," he said, making her sigh. "Aish. If I knew you were a kid in that rigorous body of yours, I also wouldn't have married you," she said, looking out of the window, making him fake a gasp. "Are you serious? How can you ignore this cute face of mine like that?" he said, cupping his cheek with one hand while the other was still on the steering wheel. Yn once again shakes her head, looking out of the window and regretting her life decisions. First, she had to take care of one kid, that too in an adult body, and now his daughter too. She can't believe she had been taking care of them for 10 years, but it was all worth it. A smile formed on her lips, thinking that, as she chuckled silently but then choked, when she heard his words. "Between babe, since you are missing your tiger so much, should I become a tiger tonight?" he asked with a smirk, and her eyes widened, cheeks getting red as she looked at him, who was still smirking. "Ya Kim Taehyung, I will kill you today," she said, hitting him with her purse as he quickly parked the car, giggling out multiple sorries till she got tired and sat back, giving him a death glare. He giggled again. She was still the same. No matter how much time they spent together, she was still his shy Yn, the fierce lady who can punch anyone she wants, but gets shy in front of him. He smiled, looking at her, and intervened their hands, making her smile, a blush once again appearing on her face as she focused out of the window. "Wow, Dad, Mom is gonna love all this," Tae said, clapping as she looked at all the decorations. She and her father did. Taehyung looks at her with love-filled eyes and crouched at her level. "After you do what you have to, go with Mina auntie and Jimin uncle don't." He couldn't complete his sentence when Tae playfully rolled her eyes. Yeah Dad, go straight to their car, and eat when I'm there, no tantrums, and sleep. If something happens, call Mom or Dad right away," she said with her hands on her waist in a fake stern tone. "Oh God, Dad, this is the..." She looks at her hands, counting on her fingers, and then at Taehyung with her widened eyes. 20th time. Can you believe this 20th time you are repeating the same sentence?" she said, making Taehyung sigh. "You are becoming a brat." She giggled and ran away as she saw her mom coming. "I love you too, Dad," she said before running away. Taehyung cleared his throat, fixing his coat as he stood up preparing himself, going towards her. He held out his hand for her, making her smile as she took his hand and let him guide her. "Happy anniversary, babe," he said, pulling out the chair for her to sit. Once they sat, she looked around amazed by all the decorations. "It's beautiful," she said, admiring everything, making Taehyung sigh in relief. He was about to say something but he heard her giggles. She was looking at her daughter, who was wearing a waitress dress, bringing the cake for them, making Yen giggle at her cuteness. "Your cake, ma'am, sir," she said in a professional way, making the both of them coo at her. "Aiku, my baby is such a cutie," Yen said, about to stand up and hug her, but the little girl stopped her. "No ma'am, I'm not your daughter today, enjoy your meal," she said and bowed cutely, making them chuckle. "Did you like the food?" "Did you like the food?" Taehyung asked Yen, who was staring at the moon. Yen looked at him and nodded her head, smiling widely. She bring out her purse and a beautiful red velvet box from it. Taehyung looked at her as she opened the box, but his eyes sparkled when he saw two beautiful bracelets with their initials on them. She hold his hand, making him wear one and then give him her wrist so he can do the same, which he did without any complaint. "This is our lucky charm, don't ever remove it or I'll kill you," she said with a death glare, making him chuckle as he nodded his head. "Okay my lady fierce," he said, putting his hand in his pocket, and pulling out a velvet box, making her excited, because she knows every year he comes with a great new idea on this day. He pulled out a necklace that had some flower petals inside it. Yen frowned, looking at him. "Remember these flowers?" he asked her, looking at the almost dried flowers. They were dry, but it was like someone had taken care of them carefully, with love. Their color was still retained. She widened her eyes when she remembered. "Gladiolus?" she asked, making him smile and nod his head. "Gladiolus, the flower I gave you on the night of our marriage. You remember what they mean?" "Sincerity," she mumbled, making him nod his head and smile. "But you know what's the best part?" he asked, making her shake her head. He put her hair on her shoulder, making her wear the necklace, and he placed a kiss on her bare shoulder, making her shiver. "These are the same flowers, and I preserved them for 10 years, for our 10 years anniversary," he said, making her gasp as she looked at the beautiful moon-shaped necklace with a star encaged in between her. "The moon is you, that never lost her shine. The star is my heart, who is nothing without the moon. Stars fill the sky, but moon make it special. Without moon no any star can intensify the beauty of the dark sky. You are the same, the moon of my dark life, and I'm that star who without you is nothing, who rise with you and set with you," he said, making her eyes fill with tears. She didn't lie when she said he would have something special for her. Of course, he had. He exactly knows how to make her happy, like the moon and stars. If one is missing, it is blank and dark, like the whole world is dull. Taehyung wiped her tears, kissing her cheeks. As he cupped her cheeks, the box still in his hand. "You know I hate to see you cry," he said, making Yen laugh and step back and wipe her tears. "Oh wait, I have one for myself too," he said, taking out a ring with a moon over it. It also had the same flowers, but Yen frowned. "Okay Mr. Kim, I know we both love this, but that doesn't mean I'm going to let you replace that with our wedding ring," she said, making Taehyung chuckle and shake his head. "It's for my thumb, babe," he said, wearing, and it looked great on him. She smiled widely, making him giggle. Suddenly he remembered something. He pulled out his phone, playing some music, and then went on his knee holding a hand out for her. "Will you dance with me, my queen?" he asked as if he was a real prince, asking her to dance in a ballroom, making her giggle, and nod her head, taking his hand. They were lost in each other's eyes, moving their bodies to the rhythm of the music, when she said something making his heart stop. "You know your 6 months are over, right?" she asked seriously, as his eyes filled with tears. "Was it the end? Will she break everything with him and leave him alone? No, she can't do that. He can't live without her. he looks into her eyes desperately. YYN. He tried voicing his thoughts but his words seemed to be stuck in his throat, not coming out. Taehyung, let's not divorce. I know it was my misunderstanding that I thought we fall out of love. She said, looking into his eyes, making him take a breath. Let's not repeat those mistakes. Let's not make each other feel as if we fell out of love again. She said, making him smile and nod his head. Tears filled his eyes, but this time of happiness. The day the moon lost its shine is the day I'll fall out of love with you. He said, making her chuckle at his cheesy words. I love you, my fierce lady. He said, joining their head together, making her smile widely. I love you too, my baby tiger. She giggled, making him join her as they stare at the sky. You are the only moon of my universe, I won't ever let go of you. He mumbled as he closed his eyes, feeling her breath while she lay there on his chest, hearing the most beautiful melody she had ever heard.